A lot of organizations do a content play and they hope it will convert. Marketers, I blame you.
Right now, people are getting ridiculous reach with their vertical videos because LinkedIn wants people to use the new feature. So, like, go out there and make vertical videos.
Marketing is actually going and being with sales in customer meetings and not just listening to recordings. Because I think that putting the face, especially when you're a 20-person team, it makes a lot of sense and they want to know who they're going to do business with.
You are early stage. More is not better. More is just more, and more is expensive.
I think a really good strategy right now is create organic content. The channels in which your community is, it could be LinkedIn, it could be Discord, it could be other places, Twitter. And then once you figure out, report whether the ICP you want to be engaging with your content, are they engaging with your content? It's very simple.
George Carlin, famous comedian, he was not going around in the 1990s doing the material that he was doing in the 1970s, right? There's an expression that goes, you had to be there, right? Because the best joke is the one that is right on cue, right in the moment.
Your business might not be a humorous business. So throwing out a joke could kill your brand because that is not your brand.
Foundational components of what it is to build brand are still as true today as they ever were.
Instead of going to the market with the product market fit messaging, or go find your message market fit, right? Is your audience problem aware?
The reason the storyteller is telling you the story is a very important part of the equation that ChatGPT does not address.
And if you go out and you pursue every channel, your CAC, or customer acquisition cost, is going to be off the hook.
You know exactly what Gong does, but whenever you think about Gong, what other thing comes to mind? It's their internal influencers that they build, the Sarah Braziers of the world, the Devin Reeds of the world, right? There's just a few things synonymous with, as soon as you think of Gong, that comes to your mind. So why break the wheel when it doesn't need to? Why rebuild the wheel when it doesn't need to be rebuilt or broken, right?
Guys, welcome to this show. So we have talked before, so we have loved your conversation. We wanted to gather all of you together and to have some very, very interesting conversation. Today, we are going to talk about the biggest problem, the GTM problem for any startup, going a cold start to a $10 million. So we're going to just talk about some of the proven content tactics and some of the GTM tactics from the experts like you guys. And we'll try to decode this thing, okay? So with me, we have Forecast, Chris Vogt. He is a strategic advisor at SensePark, and he's a master of creating those viral, personalized videos and amazing at it. So you might have seen him on LinkedIn through Death by PowerPoint and all of those shows. So Julia is fractional CMO. She's the founder of Ignite B2B Growth, and she has helped many startups and mid-sized businesses grow. Saad Khan, sales director at Aligned, wealth of experience with high-performing sales team, driving revenue and all that. Tim is the founder of Entry Point One, is a former director of sales and branding at PayPal and Visa. So really deep expertise in global brands and amplifying their market presence. So guys, thanks a lot for showing up. So we'll just get started right away. So we have 1 hour. We'll try to cover as much. Chris, early stage startups always struggle with creating content that stands out. What are some of the hurdles and what do you recommend as the content strategy? Maybe some use cases around it.
Yeah, the easiest thing that startups can be doing for their content creation is something that actually very few of them do, which is go answer a real question. You'd be amazed at how often a company hires me to come in, help them make content. I tell them, go look for the objections. Like, go take real feedback from your users. Find out the real problems that they're experiencing, and let's go answer those in your content. And they'll come to me with a question being like, how do I optimize my team for blah, blah, blah? And I'll be like, oh, where did that come from? And they're like, oh, we just made it up. And if you have limited resources, if you have limited time, if you got to start ramping right away, go start talking about real things that the people looking to buy are looking to learn right now, and you will have an audience. But instead, what a lot of companies do is they go ask ChatGPT, they sit in a room, they come up with 20 questions that they want their audience to have. And the gold is sitting right there. Problem contains the solution. But you got to be willing to answer real questions. And so I would say it always starts with a real question. And just ask. Just ask your users. You'd be surprised at what they don't know and what they want to know.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's great. So Julia, obviously for this content creation, you need resources, and there are many challenges in terms of delivering it on budget and in time. So share some of the examples as to how startups actually end up overcoming such obstacles.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you. And this is what I love about the folks on this call is we all have a different lens. I think Chris is spot on with regard to going and asking your customers. I tend, as a chief marketing officer, as a service, I tend to back the view up a little bit of, is your strategy aligning to your larger corporate goals? Is your marketing strategy, let me be a little clearer, which then leads to what is the market position of your product solution platform in the context of how you're solving the problems of your customers? What does it look like in the context of your competitors? And then what is that market definition or the differentiation message that you really need to clarify? And again, it goes along with what Chris said of what are the problems you're trying to solve, and then developing a content strategy. And I always say you're going to use as much time that you give yourself. You're a startup, you need to move fast. This doesn't need to take 6 months. Take 2 weeks, think about your marketing strategy. What's your position? What's your position of market dominance in terms of that message as it aligns to your ICP and your customers? Talk to them, ask them, talk to your board, talk to your colleagues who are in that same space, and then create the content. Because if you're not thinking through as Chris said, you just jump in, you're now wasting time, resources. And if you're a founder, we all know this. You're running your product development, you're running HR, you're running finance, you're running marketing, you're trying to go to your kid's soccer game, and time is limited, money is limited. So if you can figure out what are those key pieces of content message so that you can then create the content itself with derivatives, then you're saving a lot of time. And one thing I'll touch on before I finish here is this also helps with team morale. If you're having your team spinning and spinning and spinning because you haven't really defined your message or your ICP or your content strategy, your team's just going to get real frustrated. So I think there's a way to go slow to go fast.
Yeah, so this is great. So I think, Saad, let's just build on this. So messaging is very, very difficult, right? And you might have seen quite a few mistakes, right there. So what are your thoughts around that?
I was definitely going to double tap what Julia and Chris said. I think where startups, most businesses, any founder, almost everybody goes wrong, it's a psychological thing. We've internalized the problem our business or service or software solves for, and we just start pitching the solution. Right, like from the start. And everybody always answers based on what they know now versus not what that got them to the now. So it's an exact same thing. Instead of going to the market with the product market fit messaging, or go find your message market fit, right? Is your audience problem aware? Every product and software is built because it solves a problem, not because, we came up with a feature which we think could be great for the market. Is your audience problem aware? How problem aware are they? Do you have the right audience? I think that if you know that, messaging kind of becomes a medium. Just touching on what Julia said, or Chris said as well, is like, if you don't understand what problem you're solving for, and you don't understand the state at which the individual might be who you're hitting your messaging on, it might not hit at all. So just to kind of close off, before you even get to your messaging, to what Julia said, and Chris said, how can 20 people in the starting team come up with all the narratives and problems that just this one particular thing we do can solve for? So start with hypothesis tests. Let that hypothesis drive where your messaging goes. And there's a lot of strategies and ways to do that. But I would say that stop pitching solutions, validate the problem first.
validate the problem. So that's great. So Tim, you have extensive experience in crafting successful marketing strategies. So what are the common GTM content challenges that you see the early startup face? Any examples?
Yeah, a lot of them, and thanks. I think that let's just summarize where we are and what people have said, because as we go forward and we build content for a startup, one of the key things is to have a plan, right? And to actually align with the other departments. And this is where, marketing cannot exist in an island, and it must just come close with sales. A startup by definition is chaos. It's ad hoc, but it's also extremely fun. And this is how we build team. This is how we develop strategies. And, what Saad said is right on. Look, you just can't go out and pitch a solution. No one likes that. Find out, is your audience problem aware? And going back to what Chris was saying, look, coming up with ideas internally is one way to do it. Going out and talking to your customers is the other way to do it. And mining the data, and it depends on where you are in your startup journey, on how much data you have or don't, is another way of doing it. But aligning the corporate stars so that there's a consistent plan. No sports team goes out and plays without a plan. It's the same way in business, right? You have a plan, you're going to measure it. And not only that, you're going to iterate, right? You don't know what channel is going to perform the best at the beginning. And so you have to test them. And, to ensure that you're problem aware, there's different ways of approaching it. And all of that feedback that comes back to you from that is going to give you more fuel so that you can create more interesting content. And, I think that the other thing I'd like to really touch on here is there are many different types of content. Right? There's short form content, like Chris is an expert in these videos, right? That he's making. There's also long form content, and there's all these different flavors in between. And it's really about does it make sense for your product, your audience, and your internal capabilities and resources to go out and start building that.
Okay, awesome. So I guess you're already pointed towards Chris. So Chris, what's the element of surprise, humor, and how much do they contribute to creating some amazing campus? Do you have any examples where they've used humor, surprise to build some really interesting content out there?
Yeah, so well, I'm probably not going to give you the answer that you want, because like people come to me all the time. I was a sketch comedian. I learned at Chicago's Second City. They're like the gold standard for sketch comedy. They've been doing it since the 1950s. But what they teach you is that comedy is the truth. And again, this goes back to a problem that a lot of B2B companies have. They'd rather just make up a scenario that is convenient for them, So my philosophy on surprising the audience is like, can we hit them with the truth in the first 3 seconds? And usually what that means is you're cutting off your exposition and you're starting in the middle of the action. And there's a lot of simple ways to do this too. I mean, you specifically asked about video. Simple text on the screen, some movement happening on video, right? There are all sorts of things you could do to be visually different than what's in the rest of the news feed. But the answer of what is funny is very different from room to room. Comedy is a very contextual thing. Comedy has a shelf life, by the way. George Carlin, famous comedian, he was not going around in the 1990s doing the material that he was doing in the 1970s, right? There's an expression that goes, you had to be there, right? Because the best joke is the one that is right on cue, right in the moment, So I always tell people, like, stop trying to be funny, and can you get to the truth more quickly, more bluntly than everybody else is? And the fact that you said something true, that's where the laughter comes from. And oftentimes when you watch a stand-up comedian, the frame they use is they're talking about these things. They'll say, everybody says you're supposed to blah, 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 but I personally always do. And they say the thing they do, and the audience laughs because they do that too. And if you look for what's true, you will find what's funny. If you try to be funny, you might make up something fake and then it just bombs.
Yeah, so let's just talk about making this content then, Julia. So you've identified your lane, you identified your niche market. So how do you build that particular content that resonates deeply with that audience? And how do you establish yourself to become a thought leader in that? Any case
Yeah.
studies over there?
I appreciate that. I think we've all heard that there's riches and niches.
Yeah.
And so I think being able to really narrow your focus down, and I primarily service cybersecurity. And I was at RSA earlier this year, and you walked through the vast booths, 600 booths, and the message was all the same. And in that particular space, security is table stakes. So how are you going to make it different? And an example of I was talking to a prospect actually, and their particular niche is working with high net worth individuals and celebrities, because these folks are high profile individuals that are big targets for having their identities stolen, for working with somebody from a security perspective. And so here's somebody a company that's able to really dial in on a very small sliver, but it's an important sliver for those particular people. If you're a billionaire and your name is out there, even if you're a multimillionaire, you're at a high risk. If you're LeBron James, you are at high risk for security breaches, because your information is out there. Everybody knows your birthday. They know where you were born. They know your kids' last names, all of that. So I think it's important to dial into what that niche is. And I think Drift has an early stage story of that as well. When Drift came out, they dialed in onto chatbots. There are tons of marketing automation tools out there. Obviously, nowadays, Drift is a more mature company. But they knew where their niche was and how to leverage that particular, and I'll go back to Saeed's comment, they knew what the problem was, and they knew how to, they weren't pitching a speed and a feed, and they weren't pitching something that their product development manager thought was really interesting to the how, or the sausage making, as we all say in the marketing organizations, but it was really, how are they solving the problem? So I think assuming you've got your strategy, as Tim mentioned, in your plan, and you've got that message, is really dial into what's solving the problem. And to what Chris said, hitting him in the face with that right away, that's your position of market dominance. And then whether you're using humor, or I don't like to use fear, but humor or urgency or whatever it happens to be, just kind of getting in there quick, because we all know that this is a space that is very brief on attention spans. So if you can get in front of them quickly, but I think really dialing in, you cannot be a one in a million. You can't be a million of a million. You need to be that one in a million, and how you're going to communicate that.
Okay, that's awesome. So Saad, so let's just talk about creating some campaign material from the awareness to the decision-making state. And you have already shared some of the very interesting insights about the Dooley campaign. So how this session negotiated that. So just go deeper into this entire funnel now.
Yeah, I'm going to double tap what Julia said about what Drift did.
Yeah.
So if you take every single thing away, when you think Drift, you just know, yeah, chatbots, pink color, pink and black, fancy, just, the color scheme that's now kind of everybody in SaaS is doing it. And when you think about Drift, you just know exactly what they did, right? There's another company, when you think about their name, you just know exactly what they did and how they did it. Gong sold sales tech, right? You know exactly what Gong does, but whenever you think about Gong, what other thing comes to mind? It's their internal influencers that they build, the Sarah Braziers of the world, the Devin Reeds of the world, right? There's just a few things synonymous with, as soon as you think of Gong, that comes to your mind. So why break the wheel when it doesn't need to, why rebuild the wheel when it doesn't need to be rebuilt or broken, right? So where am I trying to go with this? I worked at a company called Dooley, which is sales tech. And in my first week, my boss, my VP of sales, Michelle Peach, she actually came from Drift. I asked her, I was like, Michelle, what's my target? She said, 10,000 trial signups. I was like, wait, hold on. We're a PLG company, 10,000 signups. I'm like, give me a number. I'm like, give me a pipeline number. She said, no, 10,000 signups. I go to marketing. I'm like, how do we figure this out? How do we get 10,000 signups? And this is the age-old sales and marketing alignment issue. Our head of marketing was say, Saad, she does not want 10,000 signups. She wants us to find a way to drive enough traffic to the website that converts to 10,000 signups. Okay, how do we solve for the traffic on the website? Then we decided to think about, okay, how do we just create noise and an audience and the people just know us? This is the time when LinkedIn was becoming a content engine, and we started running some experiments. We first came up with the idea that we changed how we think about gating content. And the traditional marketing buyer's journeys suggest that buyers go through awareness, consideration, and purchase. And if you further break it down, then that model suggests that when buyers are going through awareness, they're engaging with blogs, videos, and things like that. Now, if you're aware of a term called PLG and what PLG companies do, they can afford to have a freemium version of the product, and instead of educating their audience through blogs, they can afford to educate their audience through a version of the product that they can try. Where companies a lot of time go wrong is when somebody tries your freemium product, the message that goes out to them is like, hey, you're trying a product, you should probably buy from us because you know what we do. We said, no, that's not the case. We're a seed stage company. Yeah, we can afford to have a freemium product. How dare somebody signs on to our product to try it out? Who are we to assume that they know what we do? Who are we to assume that they're aware or even considering when we know it's an unaware play? So we decided to call all those signups unaware. Then to get them aware, we created internal influencers so that by the time they download the product, people can be like, hey, these salespeople are talking a lot about this problem, right? So the logic became that if Saad Khan from Dooley is creating content, that would drive that would drive follower increases to our LinkedIn page. By that time, people are becoming more aware. So let's say my post was the unaware layer. From people navigating from my post to the LinkedIn page, now they're a little bit more aware. And then we had a tool that could capture companies that are hitting the website. So we can daily see the movement of post following to the LinkedIn page following, then on the website. So that's kind of how we were trying to create content, taking people from unaware to aware to hopefully, getting them to the decision phase. And then just partnering with other organizations who tie together marketing to create more of a brand noise. And it literally came to a point where people started asking us, we would reach out to people, cold call them or DM them on LinkedIn. And they'd be like, excuse my language. They'd be like, Saad, we see Dooley all the time. What the fuck is Dooley? Literally. And then we decided to launch a campaign called What the Fuck is Dooley? And just that started to create the noise that, hey, we see you guys all the time. Who are you? Why do we see you everywhere? So again, tying it back all to the start, how can a 20 people company leave a footprint of maybe 100 people, gain the trust that they might be bigger than what they might be? Like, we had to solve for a product being accepted by a market in a tough time, in a competitive space.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a solution to that. It wasn't the strategy to knock up, just, the problem came first and then the strategy, not let's go create influencers and that should sell our product. Sorry, that was a bit of a yap session. I hope that made sense.
No, that's great. So just to build upon this, so there's a lot of data-driven insights that can help to craft content strategies. So Tim, what are your thoughts about that? So you have seen examples how data used to drive all of this content creation in different startups.
So I love data. I think that in data is gold, right? But it depends on how you mine it, and it's never black and white. It's always the gray. And let's tee this up by highlighting a few things that we just heard, right? One thing, Chris was talking about, levity or humor and finding that truth right away, right? Saad was talking about being a little bit different and making some noise there. And Julia was talking about really understanding who your audience is. So when you look at data, there's a lot of ways to do it, right? And it depends, like, when you're a startup and you're looking at different channels, it could be demo requests, it could be customer engagement and sales meeting and talking to sales. It could be your Google Analytics, right? And what the engagement is on your website. But also, if you're running ads or you're running PPC, it's about engagement on that as well. And one thing that Saad brought up was Gong, right? I mean, you could certainly do that too. Hopefully, at this stage of the game, for authenticity's sake, marketing is actually going and being with sales in customer meetings and not just listening to recordings. Because I think that putting the face, especially when you're a 20-person team, it makes a lot of sense, and they want to know who they're going to do business with. But, in mining these different things, there's different ways to think about content, right? And again, it's about understanding what the problems are, right? It's about the different types of use cases that are out there as well, right? And it's about proof. Again, people want to buy from people like themselves, right? And so, if you're going and you're solving problems for other companies that are like you, you've helped eliminate some of the risk from that. You can find that out by talking to people, by having a case study, if people are reading it, if people are double tapping it, right? I want to give you a little story about something that we found out at a 𝐶𝐸 startup. And it was actually a partner play. And we were working with Snowflake. And, one data point that we were really looking at was sales velocity, right? And we were really trying to uncover between marketing and sales and customer success, why and what was happening, because we wanted to just kill our goal, right? And believe it or not, but when we got deep into the data, we found out that there was high turnover amongst the sales team of Snowflake. And so really what we needed to do was go out and meet them all again. And so we started hosting these little happy hours every 2 weeks in different parts of the country, and taking our different marketing materials there and whatnot. But they weren't just sales events. They were all sort of all company events where they would come and they would meet marketing people, customer success people, salespeople. And really what they did is they got to know us. And because they got to know us in a way that was sort of no risk, they saw what we were doing, they saw the proof that we were providing, and they started recommending us to their customers more, and we ended up doubling our sales, right? And so, there's a lot of ways to find it out, but always with a bunch of investigation.
That's awesome. So I guess, guys, we have talked about this content strategy. Let's just talk about the channel distribution and the channel optimization. So this question is to Chris and Saad. So what are some of the common mistakes that you see the startups are making in terms of channel selection and distribution, all of that? Because they have the limited resources. And so do you have any case studies, any examples for helping people out over there? Chris?
Saad, do you want to go first? I've been going first
Sure.
for most of these questions. So
Okay, sure.
I'm on mute. I didn't realize I'm on mute. Yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna give the laziest answer here. LinkedIn.
Okay.
It's kind of free. Depends on the plan. Also, not lazy answer. I said it was a lazy answer because LinkedIn used to be a job board platform, then kind of became like a hiring platform. And now it seems like A, it's a glorified virtual office, or B, it's a place for weirdly a lot of sales, right? A lot of pipeline generation. If you're a founder starting a new startup, you're starting on LinkedIn to market yourself. If you're starting a fractional business, LinkedIn might be the best place to find your next possible customers. And I think I'm seeing this content innovation happen on two extreme ends. One is the seed stage companies or the early stage series A or B companies, they're kind of being forced to figure this out. But figure what out, right? Where is your audience? It could be LinkedIn, it could be Discord, it could be Twitter, right? I'm using LinkedIn as a default answer because a lot of time my audience remains to be on LinkedIn. Hence why we're kind of doing this as well. But again, let's open the door here. There's a lot of other channels where you can find your audience. Second piece is that Yes, the seed to Series A, B companies are innovating, but also on the flip side of that, this year, Apollo.io, well-known data company and sales engagement platform, they compete with ZoomInfo. This year, their content wars was around community, right? ZoomInfo, that's doing multiple billions in revenue, this year, all of a sudden, overnight, decided to build a community engine, create community content, work with just, community influencers. It's a very interesting shift. And it's not happening because they're not making enough money, because now they know where their audience is. Now they know their average CEO's age is going down. Their B2B buying is more B2C than ever before. So if in B2C, people are watching videos and reviews and they're going more educated, like if I want to go buy a golf club, the day I'm about to go put the credit card in for the club, I'm at the end point of what I need to know. I actually don't even need the seller. If anything, the seller is good for you. You're in for a big tip today because you are making the sale. Like, I'm going in by the time I've decided, but the start of that is the most basic thing is word of mouth. The way you can get word of mouth is by your community channels. Then once word of mouth goes up, you can start optimizing that with SEO. So to kind of tie it together, I think a really good strategy right now is create organic content. The channels in which your community is, it could be LinkedIn, it could be Discord, it could be other places, Twitter. And then once you figure out, report whether the ICP you want to be engaging with your content, are they engaging with your content? It's very simple. Pull up a list of your LinkedIn posts that went well, which is what we do as well. And then just count. Is Saad Arshad, who is a chief operating officer, could be a very high value target for us. Did he engage with one post? Cool. Did he engage with 2 posts? Okay, we're getting somewhere. And there are similar people like Saad engaging with these posts. We're definitely getting somewhere for free. Then those posts that are working, put ad spend on it. So don't start with SEO and ads first. Let's go organic first. Let's see what's working organically, and then let's reverse and spend ad on it. In the past, what we would do is we'd come up with a hypothesis that this would fly and put ads on it from the start. And then your finance is like, oh yeah, marketing is a burn. Where's this dollar going? So yeah, I don't think we could have done this in the past. But these are strategies people are deploying now. So yeah, basic answer, but something that I'm seeing a lot of orgs do right now.
Great. Chris?
Yeah, I think the important question here is why. Stop and think to yourself, why is somebody going to listen to use an example earlier, why would they listen to Devin Reed or Sarah Brazier or any of these internal influencers when they can simply go on Google and find the right answer? Why would they listen to you when they can just find the right answer in ChatGPT? And the answer is very simple. And the answer is lost in a lot of the debates I see about the future of AI. The answer is that the reason the storyteller is telling you the story is a very important part of the equation that ChatGPT does not address. ChatGPT is going to find statistically the answer that's most likely correct, but that doesn't explain why it's telling you. And the example I like to give for companies is I'm like, okay, so you've got your internal influencer, right? Tell me which of these ideas sounds more entertaining for the newsfeed, right? You got one saying, hey, I'm an SDR. Here's my top 5 tips to smash your quota, right? So that's example 1. Example 2 is an SDR saying, hey, I'm having a really tough time right now. I'm struggling to hit my quota, and I've been falling short in my outreach metrics. So I am promising you every day at 5 p.m., I'm going to check in on LinkedIn, and I'm going to tell you whether or not I made my 100 dials. And I could really use some help. So if you've got any tips for how to hit 100 dials, jump in the comments and let me know. Right? So that first one, who is this person? Why am I going to trust their 5 tips on how to hit my quota? Why don't I just type that into ChatGPT? The second one, you're invested in this person's story, right? And that's what a lot of these influencers are doing there, right? They're actually out there having to do the job. And when they come to the audience and they're like, I had 5 different CROs this week ask me this question, and I don't even know the answer. So LinkedIn, I'm looking to you. What do you think the answer is? And it's the difference between telling the ending of a story that's already happened to an audience versus pulling them into the middle of the story where the ending has not yet been written. And I think this is really a lot of the power that, especially if you're a CEO, if you're an executive coming to LinkedIn and coming on the audience's level and allowing them to write the story with you, seeing who's on that journey too, that's a much different way to give them information. And if they just so happen to be using your product throughout this, that's a much more natural way to let them behind the scenes and show them what you're doing. But again, I think that gets lost here. Like, why are we following this storyteller? Why do they even care to tell me this information in the first place? That's a question that you can't answer by looking up an answer on ChatGPT. And I don't think nearly enough brands trying to do content out there are thinking about that question.
Okay, that's awesome. So, Julia, obviously, for companies that move from early stage to a bit mature, their distribution strategies might change. So what have you seen over there? What are some of the trends that you actually see over there?
I think Saad touched on some of it is where are your users? Where are your customers? And whether you're an early stage company, a mature company, or a well-established 200-year-old company, where are your users consuming the content? And one of the questions you asked, Saad, I know kind of behind the scenes was, what are the most effective channels for a company's growth? And my answer is, kind of like Saad, you're going to hate it. It depends. Where are they? Because for a company that's a cybersecurity company that's early stage or seed, it's going to be very different than a well-established medical technology company that's been around, Eli Lilly. Well, those, yes, they're going to have some overlapping in terms of LinkedIn or whatever, because that's where most of us are sitting from a business perspective. But you're going to have to look at where your customers are choosing. Is it in a community? Is it in, a very specific industry website? Whatever it happens to be. And I will certainly agree with my colleagues here that if you are early stage, more is not better. More is just more, and more is expensive. So find those few places that you can really extend that content for free for as long as you possibly can. And going back to a point that Tim made probably about 10 minutes ago with short form and long form, is also figure out how you can take your content and make derivative content from that. So it's not just saving resources, time and money and where you're putting it, but the content itself and how you're reinterpreting, repackaging, and redistributing the content you've already created. There's no reason to just continue to reinvent the wheel. And again, I think all of us on this panel seem to be on the same page. I think we're also seeing more and more of B2C tactics in the B2B space, whether that be user-created content, it could be influencer marketing, it could be partner marketing that's a little more like flashy. But I always go back. I probably am like aging myself a little bit or making myself like, but I always go back to what is the strategy? What's your plan? Is it supporting it? Like, don't be doing this stuff because somebody else is doing it. Is it for your business? And to Chris's my last point to Chris's commentary about the humor and like hitting it, also be thinking your business might not be a humorous business. So throwing out a joke could kill your brand because that is not your brand. Maybe there's a few, like if you're a funeral home, maybe there's a way to kind of leverage some levity around that at one point a year or something like that. And I'm looking forward to Chris's comments on that. But I think it's also, what is your brand? And what is the tone and the voice you want to put out there to ensure that you're not off-putting your customers, so that maybe if you are in cybersecurity, and I know I keep coming back to that, there is places where there can be humor or some levity or some real creativity. But at the end of the day, a CISO does not want to be hauled in front of Congress. They do not want to be put on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. So they need to find trust that they're not going to get fired, they're not going to get fined, and that they're meeting all the regulations. So where do you find balance in what kind of tone of message do you put? And where do then you distribute that? I've kind of been all over the place in that answer, but there's a lot of things to be thinking through in terms of the types of content and how you can repackage it, because you're early stage, you don't have a lot of resources. Go where your customers are and be thoughtful about your message and brand. And yes, you can probably pull a few punches here and there, but if that's not the core of your brand, stick to it. Whether you're funny or contrarian or whatever it happens to be, find maybe a radius around what that brand is so that you can leverage it. But at the end of the day, you're trying to solve these people's problems. Not try, and I'm not by any way, Chris, I'm not trying to say that funny isn't it. I want to make sure that you're not thinking like I'm hammering in on being funny.
For the record, I have not told anybody to be funny in this panel.
Yes, I know.
Question
yes.
I specifically said I do not coach people to be funny. I coach them to find the truth.
Yeah.
So I'm taking no offense.
Exactly. Yeah. So I just think those are some things to be thinking through. And there's no one size fit all. You really have to think about what's best for your business and your customer, of course.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So somehow the Chris's brand is actually being associated with funny content at the moment. So let's just talk to Tim. Tim, so how to find this balance between branding and demand generation? So what are your opinions?
Well, it's really interesting, the conversation that we've had, because it makes me think of two things, right? I started my career on the brand team at Visa, which, is one of the largest brands in the world, right? And, the learnings there I still apply today. Foundational components of what it is to build brand are still as true today as they ever were. Right. But one of the things that's happened is, with the advent of LinkedIn, and, we've had a lot of talk about that, but it's pretty obvious, right, that we're all using it. That is developing individual brands. And so, as we develop the brand for the company, because that is who we're trying to sell, right, it's important that there is, confluence with that. Right? Because otherwise you just have an individual person. And if the individual person leaves, then all of a sudden that brand goes with them. And I think that is one of the challenges of marketing, right? These days. And I think that when you see a lot of sales and marketing come together, that authenticity is really amplified to the market, and that energy is real. And there are some examples, that 𝐔𝐥𝐭𝐢𝐦𝐚 gave with his WTF campaign, which I love, or, that Udi Ledger did a great job with a gong, turning it purple, right? And having completely different types of visuals, right? And this was then all about the people and the comments and the real things that they would say. And so, look, your question was, when do we do brand? When do we do demand gen, right? And do they really need to be separate? Let's talk about that a little bit and break that up so you understand where I'm coming from. First of all, demand gen has this thought of, we're going to be hitting you over the head nonstop with sales. And I'll tell you something, it's so funny. I've been getting these sales pitched all the time now that I have my own business, right? And like, who likes to receive 4 really aggressive sales emails all the time? No one. Delete, right? However, when those emails are personalized, when they start a discussion and they're talking about problems that companies like mine face, and giving a glimpse into their solution and how it could be interesting, that really blurs the lines between a little bit of branding on what they're doing and demand gen. And I think that we're seeing that a lot in different GTM motions, right? When, for example, I mentioned partner-led growth last time, right? This is the amplification of value, or Saad and Chris were talking about community, right? Where you're able to, Mutiny, which I love, the company, they have a community that's thriving. And, we're rarely talking about Mutiny, right? But at the end of the day, Mutiny is the one that's hosting us. And so, they're building their brand through that. And then there's a number of things in between inbound and outbound that can be done. But, your question about when it should be done in the GTM motion, first of all, let's remember in a business, it's all about resources and capacity and capabilities, but also, we're here to be efficient and effective. And if you go out and you pursue every channel, your CAC or customer acquisition cost is going to be off the hook. And a lot of times it's not appropriate for what your business is and how you're supposed to be growing. And so it's really important that this experimentation mindset of what can work and how it can work is pervasive throughout the team. And then there's a plan to bring that to sort of a head, like quarterly. And it's interesting because now we're in 2025 planning, and I work, across my clients, we're planning content and we're planning different go-to-market motions. And it's about really understanding where we are now, where we want to be, the metrics, our performance, and what we're going to be doing and the investment coming down the pike. And then once that, look, one thing that we've talked about a bit, but I just want to pop it in now as we're 43 minutes into it, is in startups, Chris was mentioning why people go to the storytellers as opposed to ChatGPT. There's a lot of ways to use AI to help brainstorm or to help redefine metrics or get to a little bit of predictability in what your analyses are. And this is where a lot of the magic comes, so that people can start talking about that connection and authenticity and that storytelling that early brands need to do, because that POV is the real differentiating factor in why people want to do business with you in the first place.
Okay, that's awesome. So let's just come towards KPIs now. So Julia, so how can startups determine the effectiveness of the posts and articles? What metrics they should be looking at specifically for LinkedIn? Julia, we can't hear you.
Oh, I did the mute thing. That was me. I'm going to make this a short one because I think Saad touched on this earlier with regard to LinkedIn metrics. So I don't want to spend too much time on it, but there's analytics in everything that we're touching and how important that data is. So, I think it's really critical to look at both the leading and the lagging metrics that are coming in. I'm not going to die on the hill of likes and comments and shares. We're really looking at click-through rates and conversion being the most. And I'm going to say that word. We are 45 minutes into this, and I'm going to say the word attribution. You have to look at the attribution. And as you do and it's very difficult. Again, I'm an early stage founder myself, so I can really understand the challenges that our audience is going through on today's webinar, that it's hard to look at the full buyer journey and do kind of a post-sale analysis of touch points and attribution and what are they looking at and how long are they spending on your website. But really looking, as you have 3, 5, 10 customers, doing an anatomy of a deal. And LinkedIn is one piece of that. And, in addition to all of the metrics that Saad touched on earlier, but if somebody is making their way through a deal and they're not touching on any of, you put out 5 LinkedIn sponsored pieces or, paid items or whatever it happens to be, or even organic, stop doing it. Pull it out. And if it's something really happening, then double down on it. And going back to, I think, several things that I can't remember who said it on our panel, but test test, test, test. So, everybody's going to look at impressions and likes and shares and comments, but I think it's really looking at and using your, whether it's a marketing automation tool or if you're more advanced, in having something like a Tableau, but even looking at the analytics in the tool, looking at Apollo.io's analytics, looking at the analytics in LinkedIn or TikTok or wherever you happen to be, and is it converting eventually to a deal? At the end of the day, as Tim said, it's about resources and time. On the other side, it's around pipeline and revenue. So there's going to be various metrics that happening throughout that, but you're going to have to dig into the data, but test along the way. I said I was going to keep that short, and here we are, 90 seconds later.
No, that's great. That's great. So, Chris, in terms of capturing their attention, you talked about the first 3 seconds. So you need to break the pattern and all of that. So how do you track all of this? How do you sort of like build some KPIs around that? So
the sophisticated answer is you should have your outbound activities tied to your content, especially on LinkedIn. So if you're comparing your LinkedIn, there's a lot of tools to do that. My favorites are LinkedIn itself has some pretty sophisticated tools, and also Shield. Shield is a popular one. But like there is an outbound element to what I'm doing. It's not just can I get the attention of the audience, is what am I going to ask them for afterwards? And I'm measuring conversations generated. I am sending DMs, I am sending videos, I am reaching out on other channels, so every time I'm making a piece of content, I've got an audience in mind, and I've also got sales activities that are tied to that afterwards. And I'm measuring things like conversations generated, meetings generated, that kind of thing. So if you're comparing on LinkedIn, for example, because this is what we're talking about a lot here, I'm going to go pick on something Tim said earlier about, kind of the personal brand, personal influencer type post versus like a major brand play that a company will do. And if anybody's compared their analytics on LinkedIn, you will almost always see that personal brands do better than company pages. Again, this goes back to the question I was asking earlier of why. Why are they telling me this? If Visa MasterCard has a very well put together ad about how great Visa MasterCard is, I can save myself a couple seconds by not having to click it. They're a billion-dollar company. I know what they're going to say. If the CMO of Visa is like, hey, I'm the CMO of Visa. Yesterday, the most outrageous thing I've ever seen in my professional career happened to me. So I have to come here and share it with you. Now you've got my attention. Again, that's not something I can learn by just quickly looking up the right answer. So you always have to have a purpose. If you're trying to turn your LinkedIn content into meetings or revenue somehow, it helps to have a call to action. That could be a simple question at the end that you're using to drive them back into the comments. That's an easy way to see, did people actually listen to the whole thing? Did they actually get the full message? Or did they just watch my entertaining first 3 seconds and smash the like button? But you got to have the foresight going into this. And kind of to piggyback on something that Julia said earlier, you're making that long form content. Do you have a plan to convert it into short form content before you start making the thing? Because you should, and if I'm going to make something, if it's going to be a short form video, I should have a long form video out there too. And I should have written posts, and I should have text posts. I should have entertaining content. I should have educational content. And if it sounds like I'm saying you kind of got to do it all, yeah, you kind of do. But it's better to think of these questions beforehand. And again, that goes along too with, hey, we're planning this content play on LinkedIn. Do we have associated sales motions and activities planned beforehand? That stuff should all be baked in. You should be ready to roll when that comes out. If you're trying to react afterwards to what worked and can we put together a sales outreach strategy, you've already missed the boat, That was probably also a long rambling question, but that's my
agree more.
That's great.
That was awesome. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
what you said. It's not about just being personal and being corporate, because you're right. And people do business with people. But really what it's about is that, when you looked at like Gong, who say started a lot of this, right? A lot of people, and it was tied together, right? And that's what I mean, because you're always going to have this personal, and it's great, but let's make sure everyone's doing it and that it's not going rogue, and that it's tied back to some of these plans, like your outbound motions or your inbound motions. That's when the messages are consistent and people really resonate with what you're doing.
Okay, great. So, Saad, so we have content and we have this lead generation pipeline. So, how do you track all of it? What are your thoughts around that?
Um, reps need to fill in the CRM. I'm kidding. I'm totally kidding. That's a completely different conversation to get into. The last thing that Chris said, I feel like what's a broken horn, or it's difficult to not
Broken record.
Yeah, broken record. Sorry, I don't know where did I come from. Broken horn. What am I saying? It's difficult to not agree with what people are saying on this panel. Exactly what Chris said. A lot of organizations do a content play and they hope it will convert. Marketers, I blame you, Julia, not you, Tim, not you. But marketers, I absolutely blame you for this idea that, oh, let's not gate things. Let's leave everything ungated and it will come to us, roses and butterflies and no recession. Sales just, we don't need sales touches, things like that. No, well, the recession happened. Like all these marketing dollars became burn. But for what orgs, it did not become a burn? The ones that had a gate on their content. The ones that found the right balance of if we're creating a report, let's create a blog that's ungated that people can read, but also let's give sales actual leads that can convert versus calling every single thing MQL. So get your foundation in order first. Not everything is an MQL. Marketing should not, the way to track this is by not tying marketing down to just an MQL target. How many times have we all seen this? Marketing hits their target, CRO is getting fired. Hold on, something's off here. Marketing hit their target, VP of sales is on the chopping block. Wait, what just, hey, hold on. What happened over here? So yeah, you need to have a content play, sales conversion play with the content. Find the balance of gating things this way and ungating. This gives you two things. It won't give you 500 leads, but it may give you 100 that might be willing to talk to you. If you can find a needle in a haystack, we're heading into a very interesting direction, right? Even if you can find a magnet, lead magnets, right? Kate, lead magnets to find that needle in a haystack. 2 closed deals that could potentially contribute 30, at the minimum, 30K of revenue versus 500 leads that are going absolutely nowhere. So that's my thought on that. In terms of actually answering the question, how do you track it? I don't believe that is as important as having the right SLAs that, okay, marketing is about to do a webinar, right? Not everybody's going to talk to us. Let's break that down. Let's give the leads, let's give the attended leads to sales. First part, let's split them by attended and attended. Let's split them by customers and prospects. Let's split them by people talking to us right now versus people completely cold. First part. Second part, let's also, for a company like mine, we need to segment marketing leads by whether they're sales leaders, higher, longer nurture pathway, but higher chance of conversion versus ICs. And I'm just like basic bare bone. And then let's have a week or 2 week timeline between which we can talk to them, understand what feedback they had for the webinar they attended. And based on that feedback, let's try to convert them. The idea is not that they attended the webinar lead, let's get them to convert conversion. No. This is a nurture play, if you ask me. But it always starts with kind of how they got to the webinar, how they engage with it, and every single thing that comes after. So yeah, having the right SLAs in place, even just kind of letting people know that there might be an outreach coming after. So that's just webinars. I'll share another example. PLG used to be a taboo. Oh, don't call PLG leads. Let people self-serve. They'll buy themselves. And now there's orgs like Pocus, PLG Sweetheart saying that no, PLG now needs a sales touch on it. There's no such thing as people just buy themselves. It just does not happen. You need to now tie the PLG layer to the sales layer. Pocus started calling their SDRs flex DRs, which is their job description literally said that we're going to give our SDRs a lot of leads that have like marketing pathways of analysis, and you need to find out you're not converting, your conversion messaging is not the last step that they took, but we'll give you the history of what got them to the sign up, whether they've engaged with us in the past, whether they've been closed lost. You need to formulate a messaging on those pathways, not the end point. That could lead to a better chance of conversion versus not. And now we're actively seeing all the SDR leaders that used to be like, no, don't tie our target to marketing. Now they're like, no, please tie our target to marketing, because if we can show that we're converting leads, you can put the axe on the seller that they didn't close the lead. So now SDRs can actually have a better chance of holding their. We're going to a different direction right now. That was my ramble, but I'll pause there.
Okay. So Tim, same question for you. So from content to pipeline, how do you track this?
I really enjoyed this. And you know, as I've been listening to others, you know, the goal of this webinar was, you know, how you get from, I forgot the exact title, but 0 to 10 million, right? At your startup.
Yeah.
So it's about growth for startups. And what we've seen is that, you know, whether it's marketing or sales, we're all doing marketing, right? And so this is why there needs to be a plan, right? And, you know, it's about empowering individuals, because at the startup, one of the things that's so awesome is that it's small, everyone knows each other. But what happens? Well, a lot of times we're all remote. So we need to actually have that strategy written down, articulated, where people understand it. And so they have the flexibility to do what they need to do to get those meetings, to get those leads, but that the motions that they're building, the outbound, the inbound, the branding, the demand gen that we're talking about, really become the backbone of it, and that sales and customer success have the opportunity to really opine in those campaigns and what they're doing too, because they know the customers as well. And so, you know, we've talked about a lot of things, but it's really all about speed. It's really all about getting to know your customers, mining your data effectively. And, you know, you can use AI to help you in, you know, as part of your org chart in going faster. But the thing that resonates more that I've seen in all my clients and with others, and that I coach people on, is really being authentic about what it is you're doing. And I love what Chris was saying about, you know, show them your truth in 3 seconds. I mean, you know, people can see right through you. And a lot of times, B2B content, and we mentioned this at the beginning, I think it was Saad, where they just go and they solve this problem that doesn't exist. Who cares about that? Let's think about people. Let's think about what they need, what the problem that our product or service solves, and serve it up to people in a way. And remember, we live in a multi-channel world, right? And so we have to have multi-channel content, because people are all over the place, from their phones to LinkedIn, you know, on their phone too, perhaps on the desktop, etc. You know, and there's new channels as well, even like CCTV, which sounds really old, which a lot of people are using. And it depends on your business, what channel is most appropriate or not. And I'll tell you one thing, and just to sort of to end is, you know, a lot of events are coming back, and there's this IRL in real life, and everyone wants to go. And you know what? There are these massive, huge events. Well, you know, I see that the way of the future is more of these micro events and not these massive events that, you know, it's the same people and the same content again and again and again. And so, you know, to Chris's point, where he's creating these personalized videos, or to Saad, what he's saying, and really these LinkedIn posts and how they're going, and Julia, and how you're getting to know your customer, and understanding them. It's about fusing that together and really taking a simplified approach, but a strategic approach and a plan to making sure that your GTM team is aligned so that you spend only what you need to spend and that you measure it and that you talk up the chain so that your, CEO knows what you're doing and down the chain so you know what that last SDR is feeling and how you can make her or him more productive.
Okay, awesome. So we have two interesting questions. So one we all already wanted to discuss. One that is around LinkedIn organic reach. What's happening at the moment? And considering it's dying, so what are the strategies? So maybe quickly, if we can go around and just talk about that.
There's a new vertical video feed. So
Okay, yeah.
that's it. Anytime LinkedIn rolls out a new feature, expect them to boost it.
Yeah.
So we've seen this through a number of variations, and it always presents new opportunities and always presents new risks, So we saw this with carousels, we saw this with polls, anytime they launch a new technology, they're gonna artificially increase those engagements a little bit, right? And you're seeing this right now. People are getting ridiculous reach with their vertical videos because LinkedIn wants people to use the new feature. So go out there and make vertical videos. However, you might fall into the trap of thinking because you made a vertical video, it should go viral. And if it didn't go viral, it's bad, right? And I just want to caution everybody, if you want to take one word of caution away from me, it's don't focus on going viral. Because if I go out there and I'm like, hard workers should be paid for their labor, I might get 1 million views because that's a message people want to hear. If I've got to sell to CROs, I might not be reaching them. And a video that only gets 500 views, that's laser focused on something that's very real to CROs, might get me a meeting with a CRO who can get me a third of the way to my quota. But it's not going to go viral. And beware of the allure of big numbers. Beware of graphs with the green trend line facing up, because they can trick you into think that you're doing the right things, and a post that doesn't get huge viral reach is doing the wrong things. And I'm telling you, as a guy who's been doing this for years, they're not the same thing. Just because someone went viral with their happy-go-lucky post, or if Chris Bo goes viral with one of his goofy sketches, that doesn't mean that your real, thoughtful post about a real thing that didn't go viral, it doesn't mean it was bad. And again, that's why you should have sales outreach attached to your content, because going viral is not the end, it's the beginning. And it's all about what you do with it.
I've gone on rants. Chris knows this rant. We are in a group together, and let's just say 2 years ago when the Facebook exodus was happening, I'm not saying I called it, but I kind of called it. I was like, hey, LinkedIn is about to turn into, I don't know, Facebook 2.0, whatever. Just, you're going to see a lot of selfies and videos, XYZ, et cetera, et cetera. And the reason why I went on a rant at that time was somebody was taking credit for something that I had done, and I was very salty for it. And I was like, well, hold on. I can get salty about it, or I can just accept the reality. And the reality is that there's two things that could happen. If you follow the algo and just become a slave to the algo, you can get 10K followers in a year. I did not. I've been on LinkedIn for 5 or 6 years. I'm barely about to scratch whatever milestone I'm about to scratch. You know why? I'll tell you why. From day one, I told myself, and I told everybody around me, that I want to be known for one or two things. If somebody reads my content, they invite me to events like these, right? That's the only niche I want to have. B, I want to optimize my LinkedIn for attracting talent and being attractive as a talent. I don't pre-plan my posts. I haven't posted literally in 2 weeks. I've gone against every algo. I'm posting and talking about the exact same thing I was doing since day one. I don't go viral, but I almost always get the same 100, 150 sub whatever engagement points, but like a specific number of interactions or impressions from the same people that I do over and over again. And guess what the result has been? I've decided to stay in sales tech. I'm now in my third sales tech company, selling to the same VPs of sales that I've sold twice before. The benefit is that my company has earned more trust because of that. My content has stayed the same, and those people just keep coming back to me. Is like, hey, Saad, sales guy, we know your content. What are you selling now? There might be something relevant for us. So just trust. Optimize for trust. That's all.
Okay, awesome. Julia, Tim, quickly.
Julie, you want you want to go? I'm happy to go. Look, I think that optimizing from trust is key. I think that when you look at the different video that's out there, as Chris was saying, LinkedIn is going to totally promote 7 Ways to Sunday, what they're doing. It was like, when they had these AI posts. Do you remember those? It was just like gobbledygook too. One of the things that was said here that I think is so critical is that, people are enamored by these huge numbers, and those huge numbers could be a following that doesn't make sense for the business, right? And it really is about who your network is, right? I mean, if you are targeting, like Saad was saying, VPs or whatever, and your network is built of all of them of your target audience, that is much better than having 130,000 followers, right? Depending on what you're selling. If you're selling classes, that appeal to everyone, that's good too. It depends on your audience. But really knowing who your audience is and building trust with them is about that. I would say another point too is that, one of the things that's really underused these days is having your corporate LinkedIn page go and invite people to follow it, right? A lot of people don't do that, but these people that make up the brand, when they, these individual influencers, when they tag your company, all of a sudden you bring it back around and you bring the voice and you link them together. And that's really an important part of building the brand of your company, because at the end of the day, brand is about reputation. It's about trust. It's about making sure that you've mitigated risk. And the greatest saying of all, right? And there's a new one today, right? Which is, no one got fired for hiring IBM. I mean, you have that. No one got fired for hiring Microsoft, right? That's what brand is. And so, by building it, you grease the wheels, and you're going to build your pipeline. Julia?
This has probably never been said by a webinar panelist. I think that we've covered this topic. I want to be thoughtful of folks' time, and I think that Chris and Saad and Tim have a much better have covered quite a bit.
So yeah, guys. So this has been great. So I guess we're already over the time. Chris, Saad, Julia, and Tim truly enjoyed our conversation. Thanks for again coming to our
fantastic
this forum, and we'll love to stay connected and talk more. Okay?
Absolutely. It was a pleasure.
So have an awesome day. Have an awesome week.
It was a pleasure.
So
Thank you.
It was a pleasure. Okay.
Thank you. Thanks everyone here.
Take care. Take care.
Great.
Bye. Take care.
Bye-bye.